Hello, everybody, and welcome to this September 12th, 2021 edition of the Boxing Source radio show. I'm your host, James Bell, the leader of the Boxing Source on social media. You could catch, boxing articles and more through theboxingsource.net. And we're also through social media on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and through YouTube. It's been a good little while since we've been on. Had like a few things that I had to do personally, so was a very busy past couple of weeks. But we're back at it here this week. To talk about a few of these boxing topics that have happened over the past 7 to 10 days or so. Of course, we've had a few things that have kind of restructured the schedule in the sport of boxing. We were supposed to, at least have some type of event, yesterday that had been pushed for another week. And now that fight has been delayed once again. So we're going to, touch on that. Um, of course, we're going to get into what happened, where you had a guy that was almost 60 years old um, being in the boxing ring. Um, and that's kind of like been one of the hot topics for boxing is, what happened last night. Um, and we're also going to get into the conversation with um Oscar Valdez there, who did have his fight that did take place on Friday night, even though it wasn't supposed to take place, but it ended up happening anyway. So we're going to get into that as well. And we're also waiting on official word about, to me, probably one of the biggest fights of the year. Um, as a boxing, columnist and as a boxing fan, this is like one of the more anticipated bouts for me all year. Um, looking forward to this. Hopefully, this thing will particularly get signed and be official. But we're going to wait on official word of that. But I wanted to jump into what's happening when it comes to the thing for yesterday. Of course, you had boxing Hall of Famer Evander Holyfield um, going up against Vitor Belfort, and the thing was just a crazy situation. Of course, we know the result. Vitor Belfort, blitz Evander Holyfield, and scored a knockdown, and eventually got a stoppage there in the first round. Um, but like to have somebody there at 58 years old, whether it was something that was sanctioned or not, like there has to be some type of rule where you need to be like it needs to be a maximum age for you to participate in combat sports. Like there should be a limit. I know that you had, of course, the alien or the executioner Bernard Hopkins go past 50 years old and compete for world titles pretty much at that age before he lost to Joe Smith Jr. But even in that particular aspect, you kind of like seeing the amount of slowdown that he had against Joe Smith. So having somebody like Evander Holyfield out there in in a fight against Vitor Belfort, that that shouldn't have went through. Um, and the thing about it is that uh, you had Holyfield pretty much looking real slow. Um, of course, not sharp at all, and he pretty much goes down, you know, within the first 2 minutes of that first round. Vitor Belfort hit him with a left uppercut. With almost like 30 seconds left, and the thing about it is that he came in as a replacement opponent, and that you had it was originally supposed to be Vitor Belfort against Oscar De La Hoya, and Oscar De La Hoya, of course, had his battle with COVID-19, you know, um, and now it's just this thing here with of Holyfield coming in as a replacement opponent. I don't know how that thing got sanctioned. Like somebody got to tell me how they got sanctioned. I have no idea how they got sanctioned. I have no idea, how the thing passed. But state sometimes these state athletic commissions, uh, particularly here for Florida, the Florida State Athletic Commission, actually had this thing pass through, and and that was just a bad situation overall. I know that we had the talk. What was it last year? It was like over a year ago when it could have been Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield in an exhibition fight, and then it ended up being Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones. And so, Evander Holyfield over that time was, kind of sour about that, and said that, why did Mike Tyson pick me for this particular fight? And looking at what was happening here, yeah, it looks like we pretty much had a good reason on why that that fight didn't happen. It ended up being Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones. But right now it's pretty much something where we gotta check on the safety of Evander Holyfield. Make sure that he's all good and checked out and everything. Because like I was saying, man. I mean, I just don't know how this thing like went through. I mean, I seen Evander in Atlanta for that Tank Davis fight that he had against Mario Barrios, and that Tank Davis Mario Barrios fight. I seen him, and he looked every bit of 58 years old. Like especially a 58-year-old guy that has been in so many tough fights over the course of his professional career, and that it's almost like how you have a retired football player that had to deal with injuries over the course of their career and trying to get through that in order to make it through, their football career. And you see how they look after it's all said and done, and it's almost like they kind of like advanced in years by like 10 or 15 years. And like Evander Holyfield looked the very same way when I saw him in Atlanta, a few months ago when they had that Tank Davis Mario Barrios fight. And so for anyone to kind of like have this pass as a fight, yeah, that does call the state athletic commissions and whoever is involved with this in the question. And yes, that does include Ryan Kavanaugh and whatnot, who was part of this whole thing. I mean, this is the thing about uh sometimes the sport has its high points and its low points, and this was definitely a low point there. Holyfield hadn't been in any type of ring for over 10 years. You know, you know, um, and and you see like what happened here in this particular instance, man. I mean, look, you got this thing here where you have it was and it was originally, remember, it was supposed to be at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, man, and now it's and it moved over to Florida, particularly because the California State Athletic Commission wouldn't even, sanction a fight. So they said, nah, we ain't gonna be uh we ain't gonna be part of this. We ain't gonna join in on this whole little um exhibition or whatever type of thing that y'all want to do here in this instance. And we're going to just say, nah, we ain't gonna have it here. So they moved the entire event to the Seminole Hard Rock Casino over in Hollywood, Florida. And hey, I mean, hey, if they saw some money in it, then that's what they, went ahead and gone through. They just saw some money in it, and it went ahead and had these, particular fights that were, there on, you know, like to me, like for real, I'm like at a loss of words for it because uh the thing about it is that even like how this whole thing has been kind of interpreted, like they don't even like people aren't even sure that this is an actual official fight sanctioned by the Florida State Athletic Commission, if it's official or if it's an exhibition, if it's going to count on the records, for Vitor Belfort and Evander Holyfield, or it's not. Like this is but it was just wild how they were able to go through this particular thing, and for Evander Holyfield to actually step inside the ring, and all across the board, people were like, "Yo, why in the world was he able to do this?" You know, that's the thing about it. So, like I said, Vitor Belfort does this whole thing with Evander Holyfield, and I don't know like how that's going to look, as far as like the overall boxing scene, because Evander Holyfield's way past it. Like, come on, I mean, he's 50, 58 years old, about to turn 59 years old. Here within the next in the next month, it's going to be about 5 or 6 weeks, and he's going to be 59 years old. And for anyone to actually have him step up and go into a fight, that's just crazy in itself. And we have like other fighters that are contemplating getting into the ring once again, you know after being inactive for over 10 years, 10 or 15 years. And whether they're fighting guys in MMA or coming from other sporting other sports, this is something where you're putting yourself at risk every time you step into the ring. And for people to do it at this particular point of their lives, that's very dangerous, and that's something that has to be monitored. That's something that has to be checked, and I don't think it's really being checked to a certain degree. And the thing about it is, it's like, look, we got like all these other topics that we got in reference to the sport of boxing itself, and this is one thing where I say like, yo, we got to be more careful as far as like who we're able to have or approve there within I'm saying like stepping in the ring and all that. That's just wild in itself. You know what I mean? So I I don't know like what to make of all of this, what the end game of it is, having these type of fights going down and having it being approved. That's something that we gotta we gotta call into question when it comes to the sport of boxing. Hopefully we get more of a we get more of a thing where we kind of like say, hey, we need to put a halt to all this, because this is not really, it's not really helping the sport, and it's not really helping the people that are involved in the fights. You know, that's gonna be like a like a long term thing. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing about it, man. So hopefully, like I said, Evander Holyfield is all good. When it comes to that particular match, even though he was talking about, wasn't really hurt. The referee, stopped the fight early, and I'm like, man, you shouldn't have even been in the ring in the first place. I didn't even really think that Oscar De La Hoya should have been in the ring, going up against Vitor Belfort, regardless. I mean, we see what happened there with little Chavez going up against Anderson. So I mean that, I'm still laughing at that. I'm still laughing at that particular bout. But the thing about it is we got all of these other guys that are, pretty much retired from professional boxing, trying to do this whole thing with the, either exhibition circuit or whatever, and trying to get money that way. And that's to me, that's a problem. That's definitely a problem there. So hopefully things get better better when it comes to all of that, and that we really don't see something like that happening that much, here anytime soon. So, I mean, I gotta, yeah, I gotta just say that, yeah, we need stuff like that to kind of like be put over on the side, and they need to like take a break from all of that there real quick. You know what I'm saying? So so that's pretty much what I got in reference to all that. You know what I mean? Um, that's the thing, man. I just didn't necessarily like how that whole thing went down, and you seem like with like I said, with Oscar De La Hoya saying that, hey, I'm checking out due to being in the hospital with COVID-19, that maybe they shouldn't have just went ahead with the overall event itself, but they went on ahead with it, and they added in Evander Holyfield with like what 10 or so days uh replacement. Like, come on, like you can't like do that. That's the worst part about it. It's like you put in Evander Holyfield as a replacement opponent to Oscar De La Hoya with 10 days, before the fight. You know what I mean? So that's the thing about it. I'm like, come on, man, you can't be having all that stuff going down. That just don't even work, man. Uh, and I see here that those that are part of this live chat. Yeah, they ain't really feeling Holyfield, or they haven't felt Holyfield because of his old dealings and whatnot. So, but this kind of like puts another quote unquote black eye to his image, so to speak, man. You can't like have something happening like I was saying with him being over in Atlanta a couple of months ago. He has a statue dedicated to him there that's at the Phillips Arena in Atlanta, and then he turns around and he has this fight on short notice, and basically embarrasses himself. So that's not definitely a good look for him. And it's kind of like seeing that. I'm not sure like if these other guys that are been out of the sport should really do this, unless if they kind of like do it in a way that makes it I guess good for all parties involved. Because I know that there's like other retired boxers that are still doing the thing, as far as like trying to do a celebrity boxing circuit. I know that boy Zab Judah is doing something there with like a celebrity boxing circuit. I think he's had a event or two over in Puerto Rico for that. But you also have, of course, Shannon the Cannon Briggs, still trying to get himself involved with that type of stuff. But I guess with the way that he's kind of like put himself in shape, that they really don't want to go ahead and approve a fight with uh Shannon Briggs. So that's kind of wild in itself, right there. But that's pretty much what I wanted to say on that. You'll probably get back into it a little bit later, but Like I just really did not like how this whole thing was handled with Evander Holyfield, and hopefully we really don't see anything like that happening there in the near future. Next up, wanted to jump into the whole thing with the card on Friday night, top ranked card. Of course, it was headlined by Oscar Valdez. They're going up against Rosen Conceicao, whatever it's called, whatever his last name is. He did get a unanimous decision win with two scores of 115, 112, and one score of 117, 110. That was that was how that is. Kids have a live comment here. He said Vitor Belfort made Holyfield do the thistle dance. Hey, listen, I'm kind of like on the old side, so I probably had I probably had to look up the Fizzle dance on YouTube or something like that. I don't know if it's like the Laughing Taffy or the or like the two step or whatever it was, but or Harlem Shake. But I'll look that up to see if that was similar to what happened there that Vitor Belfort Evander Holyfield fight. But back into let's talk about here Oscar Valdez. Of course, people would talk about Oscar Valdez over the previous few weeks because of um, him testing positive, for an illegal substance, and him claiming that it came from tea with where he was doing some weight loss, drinking tea. But the fallout from that was the WBC said, hey, I mean, I guess we'll go ahead and we'll forgive you, and we'll let you keep the title, and we'll let you defend the title on Friday, September 10th. This is something where I know it's a fairly important fight for you, so we're gonna have you keep the title there while you go up against Robson Conceicao. Um, for me, man, I like come on, like I know that he was coming off a big win over Miguel Burchelt. That ended up, ending being like one of the candidates for like knockout of the year. But to have something like this happen where, he's kind of like trying to keep his weight down, which is kind of concerning to me because it hadn't been that long ago since he was, in the featherweight division. So I mean, he had moved up to the super featherweight division at the end of 2019, and he had like a few fights before going up against Burchelt, which was kind of interesting because he wouldn't go up against Jamel Herring. Since he was a WBO featherweight champ, he would move up and be the immediate contender for the super featherweight title, but he didn't go that route. He went over against Miguel Burchelt and then got the win. And of course, he gets, popped with this, illegal substance, and the WBC forgives him. And that kind of like goes into one of the topics that people had been talking about over the previous week as far as like who Oscar Valdez is involved with. So we'll get into that, but he went up against Robeson Conceicao, who came into this bout undefeated, 16-0. Going up against Valdez, 30-0. Was like a little bit of a performance there for Oscar Valdez. He got through 12 rounds, like I said, scored the unanimous decision victory and whatnot. And Valdez pretty much kind of like called out uh the champions out there, or the winner of Jamel Herring versus Shakur Stevenson, which will be held over in Atlanta later this year. But that's something there where he kind of like he could have had fights against either one of those guys. But he decided to move up from 126 to 130, where he didn't fight Shakur Stevenson for that WBO belt. And then when he moved up to 130, he didn't fight Jamel Herring. So I kind of like question personally. I gotta question his intent on fighting either one of those guys because he could have easily fought either one of those guys already, and he didn't go ahead and do that. But he still went on ahead with this particular fight here over in Tucson, Arizona. That's pretty much where he's kind of set my base from. But it to me it was just something where he kind of like was just trying to get through this fight and get the fight over with, get this whole little thing over with this controversy with the positive test that happened. But he's still gonna be put on a microscope or put under a microscope because of what happened. And other people have said like this is yet another person that did test positive for an illegal substance under the camp of Team Canelo, or as they call the Canelo team, where you do have those trainers, Eddie Reynoso. So Reynoso, of course, has his guys there: Canelo Alvarez, Eddie Ruiz Jr., Oscar Valdez, uh, Ryan Garcia, among others. And so when you have something where you had in the past, Canelo tested positive for a substance, you have, you know, Ryan Garcia taking a quote unquote break from boxing. And now you have this whole thing here with Oscar Valdez is raising a good number of questions there. And one guy that has raised questions about it is a super middleweight champion by the name of Caleb Plant, who's planning on fighting Canelo Alvarez in November. And he said, like, hey, look at all this stuff that's happening over in the camp. I mean, that kind of like, puts everything into question, you know? And, some people kind of like raise it up when the fight between Plant and Canelo was originally scheduled to happen. Shoot, it was supposed to happen on Saturday, this coming Saturday, and it got pushed back. And they said, "Nah, we can't really have it here on Saturday." And when that was kind of like announced, that's when Caleb Plant was like, "Look, man, I done, put like every concession out there on the table. Let him handle business when it came to having a wedding and going on vacation, doing this and doing that. And now I said when it came to the fight on September 18th, I'm ready to go. And now y'all telling me y'all ain't ready to go. And so what's going on?" And so now they ended up rescheduling this bout. So it'll be in November, and supposedly. And now you have all this stuff going on with Oscar Valdez. Uh, the whole thing with Ryan Garcia, we don't necessarily know for sure what was up with all that, with him taking a hiatus from boxing after he had his win against Luke Campbell at the beginning of this year. So now it just puts a real scope there on the camp of the Canelo team. So that's something with that. But for me with Oscar Valdez, I mean it's something where he kind of like had all that momentum, scoring that win over Miguel Burchelt to win the WBC super featherweight title, and then something like this happens, and that's crazy because you would have a win like that puts you among the top there in that super featherweight division. A lot of people kind of like rated Oscar Valdez as the top guy there at super featherweight, by scoring that win. And now all of that momentum seems to be taken away from this positive test. So he gotta, do something, I guess, later on down the line to kind of like make up for it. But it looks like, he's waiting on what's going to happen between Jamel Herring and Shakur Stevenson, who's going to be fighting for that WBO title. And like I said, that's going to be over in Atlanta And that is going to be scheduled for Saturday, October 23rd. So that's one fight that I'm also looking forward to is Stevenson against Herring. I mean, this is going to be pretty much Shakur Stevenson's first real test against a veteran, solid veteran in Jamel Herring, one of the frequent guests here of the Boxing Source radio show. Probably see if I could get him on here one time once again. Um, and someone that came off of that impressive victory over Carl Frampton, where he traveled overseas, there and prepared himself to go up against Carl Frampton. And there were some people that felt like Carl Frampton would have been able to get Jamal Herring, and Jamal Herring said, "Nah." He overwhelmed Carl Frampton, beat him up, like hit him with a good number of power shots, and took him out, and pretty much like ended Carl Frampton's career. So here it's going to be, Shakur Stevenson. People feel like Shakur Stevenson is one of the more talented fighters there in those lower weight classes when it comes to like 126, 130, 135. He is mentioned there as, one of the better defensive fighters within those divisions. But it's going to take much more than that in order to get the better of Jamel Herring. So, uh, and I've said it a few times before on this podcast here. I have Jamel Herring winning. I have Jamel Herring winning. I'm favoring Jamel Herring to get a decision win. It's going to be a pretty solid decision win for Jamel Herring. It's going to be a little bit of a learning lesson there for Shakur Stevenson, I feel. So we're gonna see like how that's gonna turn out, and that'll straighten out the super featherweight division here in these next couple of months or so. You know what I mean? So you do have that. Um, one other thing is that we do have coming up, and this is something that I've been kind of like anticipating. Right? Is this whole thing here with uh the WBO welterweight champion Terence Crawford and the two-time welterweight champion Sean Showtime Porter. That fight looks like it's going to be solidified within the next couple of days. We did, of course, they had like a purse bid that was scheduled for, um, that previous Thursday, couple weeks ago almost. Then that was pushed back, and so now it's like, okay, we had it pushed to, it's supposed to be now September 14th, but Bob Arum basically said that they are kind of like in the verge of announcing that particular fight. You know, that he should be going ahead and announcing that fight, that it would be scheduled for November 20th. You know, um, and like I said, that's going to be a great, 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 great fight. You know, when the WBO announced that Sean Porter would be the mandatory challenger for Terence Crawford, that was the thing that kind of like made me, really excited. That was like one of the rare times when I was like really excited about, a particular fight that could be happening this year. And for, Bob Arum to kind of like say, okay, you know, um, yeah, we talked with PBC as late as yesterday. It looks like Porter is on board or close to being on board. And hopefully Terrence will be on board and we'll announce that fight next week, hopefully. And so that's Bob Arum right there in when it comes to this whole thing with Terrence Crawford and Sean Porter. November 20th, they're trying to see if they can host that particular fight. I don't know if it's going to be on pay per view, which is going to be something that I'm kind of like interested in. Because if you're going to have this fight being announced for November 20th, right? Um, And like I was saying with the Canelo versus Plant, that's supposed to be in November as well. So you're gonna have two pay-per-view level events there within that same month. And of course, you got Canelo being Canelo, and it's gonna be against Caleb Plant. Uh, and that's gonna be for the undisputed super middleweight championship. But like I was saying, man, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Terence Crawford could do against somebody like a Sean Porter. Sean Porter has been somebody that over the past few fights has adjusted his offense to be a little bit more of a boxer instead of like a brawler. Of course, a lot of people feel like Sean Porter is more of like a brawler type, but he's had a couple of instances where going up against Danny Garcia and even against Errol Spence Jr., where he was able to get in there in and out and boxing those guys. And so he was able to box to get himself a win over Danny Garcia. And to me, if it wasn't for that knockdown that Errol Spence scored, he probably could have been the unified champ. You know, but you do have Terence Crawford, who's had his fights here in the welterweight division. Of course, a lot of people kind of like question those fights that he's had in the welterweight division. But he's still one of the guys that people feel is one of the most talented fighters in the sport of boxing. People have come on here and said that they feel like Crawford is going to stop Sean Porter, and we'll see. What happens there. I mean, like I said, Sean Porter has been dropped, but he's never been knocked out. He's never been stopped. You know, um, and this would be something to where Terence Crawford could possibly send a message to the rest of the welterweight division that says, "Hey, if I'm able to stop Sean Porter, that's something that none of y'all were able to do. That's something that Keith Thurman couldn't do. Something that Danny Garcia couldn't do. Something that Errol Spence Jr. couldn't do. Kell Brook couldn't do. You know, and it would be something too because with Sean Porter is somebody that pretty much like started his career well north of 147 pounds when it came to like the amateur ranks and all of that. For his wins in the amateurs, and him coming down from like 160 years old to 154, and then down from 154 to 147. And so he was able to win titles at 147. Did have his loss to Kell Brook, and then was able to win another title against Danny Garcia before losing that belt to Errol Spence Jr. So right now, this is something where you kind of like see if Terence Crawford is able to step up to the plate against someone that has been a long-standing top five fighter in the welterweight division. You know, so that's something that I'm definitely waiting on. That's something that I'm kind of seeing here how that's going to turn out. If they're going to get themselves up and running to have this particular fight scheduled for November 20th. And if it does happen on November 20th, man, I don't know about this fight between Canelo and Plant. Like, I was feeling like I should go over for Canelo versus Plant, but I feel like, like fight fans will really be looking forward to Crawford versus Porter if it does go down there on November 20th. So that's the thing about that, man. I'm kind of like really, yeah, I'm getting more excited about this particular fight, and if it's gonna go ahead and happen to go down, that's something that I'm really kind of like looking forward to see like how that's going to get going. You know what I mean? So that's the thing I got on that. Usually, with this kind of like being a slow little weekend in the sport of boxing, this kind of like says like how much has been kind of like postponed and everything. We could have had. Remember, we could have originally had the Canelo Plant fight coming up this week, and that's been delayed. You know, we could have had the thing with Stephen Fulton and Figueroa. You know, That was supposed originally it was supposed to happen yesterday, and then it got pushed for another week since you didn't have the whole thing with Canelo Plant being September 18th. So it was so that Fulton Figueroa was supposed to be at Park MGM September 18th, but with Figueroa tested positive for COVID, now that fight has been rescheduled, and it's kind of like puts things into question as far as like how are these other fights going to be made up? You had that, you have the thing where David Benavidez, his fight, that was supposed to be over in Arizona, that got postponed as well. So so now we got like about 3 months, over 3 months left in the year, and we got a good number of fights or main events that are going to be rescheduled. And I don't know like how they're going to fit all this out at the end of the year. Really don't like you got um, a lot of these fights and a lot of these fighters, that haven't necessarily fought, and it's going going down to where you still have guys that haven't even had a fight date yet, you know. So that's something there. Shout out on the live here to 1-2 Kid. That's also picking Crawford. Like I said, there's a good number of people that are picking Crawford to win this fight. I do know others that are picking Sean Porter to win this fight. They think that Sean Porter is going to be someone that's too tough. Therefore, Terence Crawford. Um, but like I said, I mean, Terence Crawford is somebody that does deal with guys that are bigger than him over in the Bomax camp. B&B boxing. So he trains against guys that are pretty much his size or smaller than him. Like Jamal Herring and whatnot, but also guys that are bigger than him. Like Steven Nelson. So he's going to be ready for the toughness there of Sean Porter, but it's going to be if he's going to be able to get to the level where if it gets to the later rounds and Sean Porter is still Sean Porter, if Terence Crawford does get tired a little bit, will that be a factor? That remains to be seen there when it comes to that particular matchup. We still got to make sure that they're able to sign on the dotted line for that particular fight. But back to the whole thing with this, all these fights being postponed. I was talking about the last couple of fights there that were postponed. Um, of course, you had the whole thing with Teofimo Lopez too, where that whole card, did get postponed. The one that was supposed to be in June, now it's not June, and now it's supposed to have something where it's supposed to be rescheduled. So now they're trying to have that Lopez Cambosa's fight in October. I think both of those fighters have like signed on the dotted line for that, but like I said, it still remains to be seen if that fight's going to actually happen there at the theater at Madison Square Garden. We'll see when the time comes. But you also had the whole thing where that original card did have the thing where it was supposed to be an undisputed title fight uh, in the the women's game, right? As you were supposed to have Fred Sean Cruz Dezern there. It was supposed to fight Ellen Cederroos for the undisputed super middleweight championship, and it was supposed to be scheduled, like I said, for June 19th. Got rescheduled. It was supposed to now happen at September 14th, but now that can't happen because Ellen Cederroos can't even get out of Sweden. Didn't even get a visa in time to get over to the States. And so now that thing has been delayed once again. And and that's the thing about it. Like all of this stuff with this whole thing with travel issues, COVID, and all this type of stuff. It's delaying a whole lot of fights, and Fred Charles Cruz was a little bit a little bit pissed off, about this whole thing. She really wanted to go ahead and fight on June 19th. It did like take a little dig at Teofimo Lopez. Remember, Teofimo Lopez uh, had had contracted COVID. Yeah, to delay that particular fight, and you know, so now it's like having a whole bunch of fighters that are part of these undercards where they have to be rescheduled and moved, and sometimes they don't even have a fight at all. So all this whole thing about COVID test and all this type of thing, that's affected a lot of guys or a lot of fighters when it comes to rescheduling fights or fight cards. And this is something I guess we're going to be dealing with here, from this point forward. And that's going to be a definite setback for a lot of these fighters. A lot of these fighters that get themselves ready to go through training camp, use who they have for sparring partners, use who they have for trainers, chief seconds, and strength and conditioning, coaches and all that type of stuff. And they get closer to the date of the fight, and it's being rescheduled. So all of those resources that they use to, pay off all the staff that's involved in training and would have been there with them for the day of the fight, they got to take, they pretty much got to do it all over again, and that's frustrating for a professional boxer. So you got to like have something to the point where we got to restructure this thing to where they have to have some type of guarantee that they have these fights happening at a certain date or by a certain date, you know? And if not, then maybe there has to be like some type of I don't know, maybe they'll come up with something to where like how fighters, the day before the fight, if they miss weight, sometimes either they go through with the fight and pay a fine or pay off of their, purse, and then they still go forward with the fight. Or if they don't go ahead and have that fight anyway, like one party still would have to pay a percentage of the purse that their opponent would have had because they didn't, get their, have all their ducks in a row before the fight day happened. So maybe they're gonna have some type of a little thing where you have, fighters try to get themselves more in an accord to get themselves ready for these fight dates and not be able to have any type of hiccups or trips or whatnot that would delay or overall cancel a fight. You know, so that's probably what's going to happen possibly here within the future to kind of like get more of these fight cards and make sure these fight cards are guaranteed because we've we've had a lot of high profile fight cards be postponed or canceled over the past 3 months because of people testing positive for COVID or having injuries or whatever it is. So that's what is going down right now. But overall, that kind of like covers most of the stuff that I wanted to get in, man. I mean, we've of course, it's been a good little bit of a hiatus, but this has kind of been a fairly slow, fairly slow type of card here, and what's also crazy is when it comes to delays, man, even with what's going to happen next weekend, like we have PBC Fight Night on September 18th, and you know we already have one of the fighters that was going to be part of the card September 18th is already out through a thumb injury. So he had like a recent sparring session. This is Surrey Mahmutovic, or Mahmutovic, actually. Mahmutovic. 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 All right. So he injured his thumb in sparring, and now he's been scratched from the fight card that was supposed to happen this coming Saturday, the 18th. And well, I mean, there we go once again. What another fight delay or another guy that's scratched from the fight schedule that kind of like affects these fight cards. And I mean, this is something that we really hope doesn't happen that much from this point forward. When it comes to the these big fight cards coming up. I mean, we're pretty much about 4 weeks away from Fury Wilder 3 is supposed to happen. Of course, October 23rd, like I said, you got Jamal Herring versus Shakur Stevenson. You also, will have possibly the thing for Terence Crawford versus Sean Porter. And those are going to be three key fights there within that, you know, kind of like 8 week period. So hopefully, they can iron things out to where we have some more fights going on in the tail end of 2021. We might see Tank Davis once again, probably in December 2021. We got a few other fighters that are out there, like a Keith Thurman. We haven't heard much from Keith Thurman. To see who he's going to end up fighting next. You got like a few other guys in the heavyweight division that haven't necessarily fought yet. And if you got like stuff that's happening in the middleweight division. Of course, you have Gennady Golovkin. He was supposed to be, fighting for in a unification bout, but it's gonna be a unification bout, against a guy that kind of is a champion, but he was kind of like elevated there as a champion in Ryota Murata, and that's going to be unification. That's planned to happen in December. But outside of that, we really haven't had much action as far as like any new fights that are going to be materialized. We don't even know if they're going to have a rematch between Jamel Charlo there against Brian Carlos Castaño for the undisputed, super welterweight titles. That ended up being a draw when they fought earlier this year. So there's like a lot of key fights that could be made that haven't been official quite yet. And this whole thing with COVID and injuries and all this other type of stuff has really affected the sport of boxing. But hopefully they could get things going to be a little bit better off, and we kind of like finish the year strong here in the sport of boxing. That's what I hope for here with more fights that could be added onto what's already been announced or already been booked. So that's what pretty much have here in this particular episode. We'll get back at it here sometime, probably around September 19th. So we'll see if there's going to be some more news and notes happening when it comes to upcoming fights, because we really don't have that much action out there for a couple of cards that's going to happen this weekend here on the stateside through FS1. So look forward to that. But that pretty much, like I said, that pretty much does it for this episode. And like I say at the end of every show, opponent boxing is hit, not get hit, not to say the trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.